Back on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's call the Budget Committee back to order. It's now about 12:30 and we're pretty much on schedule. This is the Budget Committee of Tillamook County. Today is Thursday, April 13th, 2023. The time is 12:30 and we have about 5 departments. Actually, two are the same emergency management sheriff are usually combined, but we'll be going through those this afternoon, and then somewhere around 3 o'clock, or actually probably closer to 3:30, quarter to 4, we will have a discussion among the committee members on some direction we might give the county treasurer, some concerns, questions, and things to deal with over the next week until we meet again in May. So that's where we are in the process. So next up is our emergency management, and we have our not-so-new director here, been here now a while, so come on up, identify yourself for the record, please, and then give us a review of your budget in whatever form you presented, ready to present.
Okay, my name's Randy Thorpe. I'm the Emergency Management Director for Tillamook County. And I don't have any cool slides or anything, but we can go through the budget. What I wanted to do is go through first on our revenues of what those are and explain those. There's the screen. I was looking for the little slash. The revenue reimbursement is money that we get from the McMinnville people, and it's to maintain the sirens for dam failure on the Nestucca. And so every year, it's under contract. Every year they put $9,200 into the emergency management budget, and that's what we will use to help maintain. If there's replacement and things like that, then those costs do go back to the dam.
Does that money come from the city of McMinnville? That's their water supply?
It's their water
Yes.
consortium.
Mhm. So they actually provide the money to maintain the sirens?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it.
Right, and who maintains them is John Spinners. He's the one that does all the maintenance up there. And that kind of explains a part of the expenditure too on this.
Well, I'd like you to keep that going, because I only live about 2 blocks from the Nestucca River.
Yes. So when you hear the siren, it's not a tsunami, it's flood. Go uphill, don't go down. Just like a tsunami, just go uphill.
But Doug, I don't think you'll hear the sirens, because the sirens are mostly in the canyon.
Yeah, that's right. But,
Oh, if you're up on the hillside, you're fine.
well,
No,
probably
he's not
14
on the
feet above
hillside
sea
either.
level. Oh, well.
And the next one is it's called FEMA, the EMPG. That's the Emergency Management Performance Grant. And what it is, it's a federal grant that we apply for every year. And we have chose to use it for salary. It's a 50-50 matching. And so every quarter I send in our report of what happened, what went on, what we've been doing in the county. Then I go ahead and send a request for reimbursement. And then usually within, 6, 7, 8 months, we finally get it back from the state. But I think they usually do. I think we're caught up finally for last year.
For last year, yes.
Yes. And that's what that money is there. It's basically set. The amount is a set amount that comes up through the state. And it is, of course, like everything else, is going down every year. And so it's down to, I think, what was it, Sean?
69.
Yeah, 69 and some change is what it's at now.
I remember that, 69.5.
Budgeted at 66.5.
Yeah.
What was that big drop in 21-22? It looked like it went from 84, then down to 40, and then back up in the 60s here. Why did that go down by 50%?
Which
21, 22.
The FEMA stuff there on line 40 through 25.
Timing issue.
42.25.
There was a timing issue.
yeah, it's the only thing I can think of is that before,
It was before Randy got here,
right,
so we had a little lag.
Oh, okay.
right, and Gordon wasn't making the money that he was making, and so the reimbursement wasn't as high.
Got it, okay, thank you.
And then, of course, donations in there. I don't know why. I would love to be able to
I'd have to do some research as to where he got that
put it
from.
in there. And then the local community funding, the $4,000, that is money that the Flood Improvement District puts into the budget every year, and that is to help us pay for our share of the river gauges on the rivers that we use to maintain, that we, check to find out where our river levels are. And so the Flood Improvement District feels that, they want to contribute $4,000 to what we pay to help offset that because...
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Are they contributing again? Because it wasn't on your sheet when you sent it back to me.
Yes, they are.
They are?
Yeah.
Okay, I will
Right.
add that in. Thank you.
Yeah. And so that's our total income that we have as far as money coming in. And so then we go down through personnel, and basically what it is that we budget for 1.25 people. The one is me. The 0.25 is for a individual that serves as my backup when I'm out of town, out of country, and also to assist in anything that I need done, which amounts to 10 hours a week. And right now, and the way it has been, is we've used Matt Kelly as that 0.25. So a quarter of his salary comes out of the emergency management budget. And that also goes back in towards the reimbursement. So if you look at the total amount that we're looking at with benefits and everything is $177,000. Half of that is, help me.
It's after lunch.
Yeah,
83.
83, and we
83
only
change.
get 69, so there is some difference because they will only match. They don't match salary exactly. It's up to the amount that they have. And so it does go over that amount. So if it was just me, with salary, we could only reimburse up to $50,000. So we'd be short. So it's kind of a numbers game on that. A lot of the other counties use the improvement grant money for materials and supplies and the whatnot, and the salaries are just paid. That's an option for us. I send in the request every year of where I want that money spent, and that's been our direction we've gone is on the salaries, but we can always use it to help offset the expenses too through the year. And going down through this, office supplies, a lot of that is just, my share of a lot of the items that are purchased, for that, or a little pod up there. So they take money out of that every month that they order supplies in. Also, if any additional supplies that I need will come out of that. And we've kept it at the $600. The non-capital equipment, same thing. It's just there just in case there is some small pieces of equipment that I could purchase that would help me do my job better that isn't, capital equipment. And then we go down to fuel and lubricants. I do have a vehicle that was graciously given to me by the Sheriff's Department. And so there's a vehicle in emergency management now, and so that is paying for the maintenance, the fuel. That went up, I guess. I did an increase because of all the increases in fuel that and the costs that we've had. And so I felt that we probably needed to increase that to $3,000 from the $2,000. Uniforms, it's never been used. That would be if I decide to, get some shirts with logos and fancy things like that. In the past, it was because Gordon was in the sheriff's office and it helped he wore a sheriff's uniform. So that's one item that I don't think I've ever used it in the year I've been here.
So, Randy, I have a question on the telephone because I pulled out what was in there because IS is now paying for all general fund telephones. Do you have a special one that is beyond CenturyLink or Verizon that should be in there? No?
No.
Okay, just wanted to.
What that was paying for, the majority of it was my cell phone and for 3 or 4 extensions in the sheriff's office that they use for our emergency operations center.
Okay.
I'm not really sure where those extensions were, but that was the majority of that cost. And now with the new system, Jeff will be able to probably eliminate a lot of that because of the lack of need, because Thornton's not in the sheriff's office anymore, so you don't need quite as many extensions anymore.
So he went from 9,000 to 0,
To 0.
and you're comfortable with that?
Yes, it's coming out of the IS budget now. Jeff will take care of all the phone issues, so. And I double checked with them again before this to make sure that was still the case. I missed printing and advertising. It's just a set amount, and publications, that's just in there in case there is something that's needed in our department. And they're, 2 small amounts, with the $200 and the $100. The membership and dues is that I do join the Oregon Emergency Management Association every year. Of course, their dues are going up, and so I wanted to make sure that we had enough money to do that. It's just a statewide organization. They do have conventions once a year, which are really nice to go, because it's a way that all the emergency managers within the state can get together and network, find out what's going on, actually see people face to face instead of telephone and Zoom. Okay, man, I'm skipping around, aren't I?
It's all right, you can hit on the big items and or those that are changed, if that helps
Okay.
you.
And then the other one that went up was the travel and mileage. This pays basically for any use of private vehicles. It also pays for the lodging and any type of fees associated with the conferences we go to. I increased it because Commissioner Bell is starting to follow me around to these. And so and it was excellent. She went to the last one we had. It was the Oregon Preparedness. And I went out on a limb and said, Mary Faith, would you like to go? And of course she says, of course. And so I think she really enjoyed it, and I think it was a good thing because as an elected official, she went to a couple of the courses there that were strictly for elected officials. So I wanted to increase that because I guess county commissioners don't have a travel budget, or they decided that this one was going to come out of emergency management. So that will pay for both me and my liaison with the commission.
It was an excellent conference.
And so you'll probably want to go next year too, so.
Don't speak for me.
Oh. Well, you better go next. Let me put it that way. Okay, then the other big one is the contracted services, $28,000. That is our share that we pay into the USGS every year as our part of maintenance of the river gauges. Total amount is over $100,000, and there's grants and there's other fees, but they assigned $28,000 to Tillamook County.
So, one quick question. Where, because it's not in TLTs, but where's the, I'll get the names wrong, North and South County Emergency Preparedness that we've been giving $20,000 each a year?
For the EBCs,
Yeah, thank you.
because we discovered that it really doesn't fit the requirements of TLT, and we put general fund last year. I don't remember which budget we put it in.
Emergency
It's emergency management. That's why if you look at the expenditures so far, it's at $43,000. And
So,
it'll continue to go up as we pay USGS.
do I need to include that $40,000 in the contracted services in your budget then for next
If
year?
you're going to do it again next year, that would be a decision for the commission.
EBCs.
All right, thank you.
So those river gauges, a lot of the fishermen use those for seeing what the river levels
Oh,
are.
of course,
fishing.
yes.
So it's related to tourism. Can we take some of the tourism money to cover the river gauges?
Yeah, I like his thinking.
It's absolutely true.
So we don't have Rachel here, who's the one that tells us no.
That's funny. I don't see her
Sean?
number. I don't see her phone number online. So I'm going to say no until she gets back.
Question worthy of being asked.
Yes, it is. It's not a big amount, but still, it adds up.
Of course, we
And-
spend every penny we have on.
Well, fishermen absolutely do study those river gauges.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know a number who do.
yeah, I look every morning when I get up, before I decide whether I'm fishing or not.
We'll buy them at my house.
You do it on, well, all the rivers. The Wilson, for example, it's between 5.5 and 7.2. If it's above or below, you stay home.
Yeah,
It's about what it is. And the guides, and we all know a few guides, they quite seriously use that as part of their business.
yeah. And then Tucka's a
We should
little
charge
higher,
them.
the ticket will go there.
Yeah.
Put it in the business license.
Oh,
There'll be a
yeah.
surcharge for fishermen and a business license for
Hey, I
fishing
like
guides.
Wow,
Okay, sorry.
coming up with great ideas to help my budget. I like it.
Yeah.
And then the next one down there is 600 on utilities. That just stays the same. Office equipment, again, that's if I need a new chair, new table, new desk, file cabinet, but luckily my office isn't big enough to put in any additional furniture, so that usually doesn't get spent. And then, of course, there's the vehicles down there, their costs for repair and maintenance, and I don't know, mine says 100 down from 1,000. I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
I may have missed a zero.
I missed a zero on that.
So easy, you got 100.
Okay, gotcha. And then the next one, the repair and maintenance equipment is 6,000. I put that into this budget because if John Spence goes out and does any work, he codes it back to the 7605 in my budget. He used to pay it out of his budget, and then they did an interdepartmental transfer, and we decided let's just add it as a line item in the emergency management's budget. And so when he gets those invoices, he'll either send them to me to code, or he knows the coding that he'll put in to have him paid to come out of that money. And so I put 6,000 out of the 9,200 because I'm hoping that we see maybe a little difference there, where we're not spending more than the 9,200.
Is it just for the tsunami sirens or other things also?
It's just for the sirens and maintenance there. He goes out and does some minor repairs on them. In the past, he's done that. Like I say, if there's some major, then it goes, usually goes out to bid, and John does that, and then that bill goes right back to McVeigh. So.
Okay.
And then I added a couple down at the bottom. Equipment and storage rental. Reasons why I put these in on equipment rental is there's a lot of supplies and equipment that I can get from the state, but they're in like Salem and Portland, and so I have to travel there to pick them up. Just like this last time, I got a bunch of pallets of some N95 masks and a few other things for our volunteers, and of course it won't fit in my stealth mobile, the car, so I took my truck, I rented a U-Haul because my truck's got a lid on, my truck's small, it'll pull a U-Haul, but we couldn't get it all in there. And so I thought, well, if this continues to where, because I hate to pass up anything free, and so I just wanted to have a little bit of money in there to help pay for any type of rental. The big one there, the 3,000, is because of all this stuff I'm getting, I'm having a hard time finding a place to store it. Right now, it's in a storage unit, and we need to figure out what we're going to do with it. I'm hoping to be able to purchase a Connex box and move down to where the other boxes are going to be that the state's putting in at the airport, and then we'd have some nice storage for supplies and equipment. Because there's been a few things that I could have applied for, but I have nowhere to put them, and So, and I get a lot of, we have no room with the different departments on their property. And so I'm looking at ways that we can do it. So I'm hoping that that doesn't have to be spent. There is some grants out there that I'm going to try to use to get some storage units and get the okie dokie from the port to put them down there. So, but I just was thinking ahead in case that doesn't happen. I really, we need a good storage area for this. I do have a little small shed that's over on the sheriff's property in the back, but it's not in the right condition really to put supplies in. And it isn't tight enough to keep out the little things that come in and chew on everything that you've got. So,
Power.
Right.
Middle one. Nope.
and then the bottom one, emergency situations, is just kind of that little rainy day fund, $500 in case we need to do any type of quick money.
We
So.
have to use the remote.
So anyway, that's the budget. It's pretty small. And do you have questions, concerns?
Would you say the capital outlay again at the bottom, the 8,000?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I forgot about that. I put in because I got some bids on a 40-foot Conex box
Storage unit.
and storage, and they run about 5,000 delivered.
And that's, you're buying it, not renting it.
It's buying it, not renting it. So that's why I put that in there. Put it in there thinking, well, maybe we have a shot with the county budget or not. So that's kind of why that's in there, is to basically going right to the container.
So you
So-
said it cost 5,000 and you put 8,000 in, did I hear that right?
Right. I put in 8 before because I was hearing they were 7, but then I got a firm bid, and the firm bid was just a hair over 5,000.
Do they require any kind of a base or foundation, or you put them on blocks, or what?
That would be the other thing, is that I want to, where we're putting them at the airport, it will be on probably asphalt. I don't think it's concrete, but it is a solid surface to where we're putting them. We're putting them right next to the Near Space Corporation, just right north of them, and there's some place in there, and they're already. And that's the beauty of using that area, is that it's got a good solid base, plus it's secure, and that's the biggest things there. That's why the state was so excited to play with us and put some containers down there with a bunch of supplies, because it was such a great site. So, but I guess what I can tell you is that if we spend 8,000, we can save 3,000. That doesn't sound good, but that's kind of my rash. I just wanted to say that that was my thinking. Is
Well,
that
there's 3,000, 3,000, 3,000, 3,000.
yes,
Overpaid.
exactly. That's why we need to purchase instead. The other option there with the capital outlay is that for South County, Dave McCall put into his request, they're redoing their transfer station. So he put in into the plans to kick it out a little bit and make a nice area they could put a 40-foot container on.
Good idea.
And so that's another thing we're doing, because they've got the little storage sheds scattered around little towns, but they don't really have anything that can store stuff like cots and cook stoves and blankets and sleeping bags. They can't put those in their little 10 by 12 sheds. And also,
That's elevated about, 60 feet maybe up there too, so that's
Yeah.
helpful.
and again, it's a secure site, and that's why I'm thinking there, and I'm looking at a lot of different sources to do that. And if we need be, then we could use it out of this budget here. North County, they already have some storage things like that up in Nehalem Bay, and so they're fine. But I know that Bay City is also in the process of buying a 40-foot container and putting it at one of their assembly sites. And they're just because they have a budget that they spend every year, and then that's their call is what they're doing there. And the beauty about these big containers is that I can work with the state, and there is some programs to where we can get foodstuffs and also water that we can store in these containers. And what the Department of Human Services does is actually will rotate it through. And when it gets close to expiration, they bring in new foodstuffs, take the other foodstuffs and go to food bank and other areas and get it utilized before the expiration date. So it'd be nice to have good storage so we could take advantage of that type of a program.
Anybody else questions? Okay, I guess it sounds like we're all good then with your proposed budget and requested budget, I should say. And
Randy,
we know where to find you if you have
Yes.
questions.
one thing you might want to add to your budget is waste disposal. You're building up quite a pile outside your door.
Well, if you notice that I've got I've been fighting with that badging credential thing. Anyway, it's big and bulky and heavy, so I think I need to put into the budget to have somebody who's younger and stronger than me to haul my junk around. So, but I am taking that, just so you know, that it was something that we got on the Homeland Security grant last year. It's a credentialing program complete with badge printer, the whole 9 yards, and a meeting with the South County group tonight, and we're going to play and show them what it is and start getting people entered into the system and really put it through the work. So when I have my next meeting with Mobile Solutions, I'll have more questions for them. So that's kind of exciting too. So
Terrific. Sounds good. Thanks, Randy.
Anything else for Randy, emergency management? All right, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, next up, actually, we're pretty close, it would be the sheriff, and that, we've set aside a whole hour. Maybe it won't take that long, but we shall see.
I will try to be quick.
Sheriff Baum, come on up. And identify yourself for the record and people online, although it's pretty obvious when you've got a uniform and a gun.
For those that don't know, I'm Sheriff Josh Brown, on the record. Well, good afternoon, everybody. So, I do want to point out that I've got Under Sheriff Kelly back there, Lieutenant Ani Seaholm, and Lieutenant Silvera. All three of those are the division heads for the 3 different divisions. They're here more as a support in case you guys ask me questions that I don't have the answer to, and they're the experts in their particular division. So feel free to ask away. I like making them come up and answer questions. So I just want to start out by saying that as a whole, and kind of based on the PowerPoint that was put out and understanding the situation, we, generally speaking, did everything we could to be very conservative with our budget this year. You'll notice that we're not asking for any additional personnel. We're not budgeting or asking for any large projects. We're not asking for 5 vehicles. Through preliminary conversations, that number is going to be a lot lower this year, and I don't even have a PowerPoint. So trying to keep it nice and simple, trying to be conservative and fiscally responsible. My thought process is I kind of go over this more as a broad overview rather than going one line item at a time, going through there, and just try to do that broad overview, and then as we start getting into the thick of it, we can answer questions from there. So what I'll start with, and I don't know if you guys care if it's in any particular order, but there's 3 of them: the Technology Fund, the Narcotics Team Fund, and the Sheriff's Trust Fund. Those all come from, the money that goes into those comes from different sources, and we really only budget that based on the money that does come in, whether it's seizures for the Narcotics Team. Technology Fund comes, I believe, from fines. Sheriff's Trust, of course, is our search and rescue fund. Hopefully the Sheriff's Trust Fund will actually increase dramatically within the next week. We'll see how that goes. But those are 3 very basic, with no major changes. They're just evened out based on what we have to work with. So
The increase, or do you mean the fundraiser?
the fundraiser,
Star
yes.
Banquet.
Yes, yeah. And I'm assuming that'll probably go on this year's, but then it would actually carry over into the beginning balance So that may change slightly because, after 3-year hiatus, we're coming back with our big fundraiser, and that money will get put in there, and it'll probably change the beginning balance, I would imagine. So that may be altered slightly, but those are very basic. They're relatively unchanged.
Why don't you start with 1530, which is your major budget, I think.
Which one is the 1530?
1530 is the criminal.
Okay. You want me to start with criminal?
Is that okay with everybody to do that one first?
Sure.
Just doesn't matter what them all.
So criminal, let me get to it. So you'll notice on revenue, I don't know how many major changes there are. Last year we added the city of Rockaway. The contract is for 4 deputies, but we only have 2 up there, so they pay us for the deputies that we actually are able to provide. We've renewed most of our contracts with Forest Service, the State Forest, ATV Committee, things of that nature. So that's kind of what those are. We have additional revenues on that same page for corrections and marine, or for jail and marine, but we're going to go to expenses on criminal. If I can find it here. So, like I said, we aren't asking for any additional employees. Any increase in salaries or personal services is just cost of living increases, negotiated increases on salaries. And then, of course, anything that goes with it as far as taxes, etc. You get down into the materials and service. That was one of the biggest areas that we tried to be very conservative and just really not be too aggressive on what we're asking. One thing I will note is that preliminary conversations have kind of brought us to where we are comfortable asking or getting 2 vehicles. And so our criminal equipment line item, in years past, we've asked for 5. We've added our criminal equipment budget for the upfitting, which is $15,000 to $18,000, and we max it out with the 5 vehicles requesting. Because we are looking at 2 this year, we've been able to be a little more exact on that line item for our upfitting. So that criminal equipment line has been adjusted down a little bit for those 2 vehicles. You'll notice that. That's again, we're just being conservative and being able to really pinpoint, because we know exactly how many vehicles we're going to get this year. Fuel and lubricants, I believe, has gone up, which of course that's from the cost of fuel. That's fairly obvious, I think, but that's what that is reflective of. There's some other minor increases. There's also minor decreases that go with current year's spending, as well as trends for things like fuel stuff of that nature. So that's kind of the broad overview of that. Like I said, if we want to discuss individual items, I will answer them the best I can, and if I don't have answers for those, I'll bring Under Sheriff Kelly up, because he oversees the criminal division. So do we want to stop and ask questions on that one now and then move on to the next one?
Any questions for the sheriff or others?
I just got one question on your personal services. Are you projecting, how many of the positions have you got that are actually filled this year, and how many are still open?
Last I looked, it was 6 in criminal, I think, Matt?
We're down to 4.
We're down to 4. We have,
Or, excuse me, 6 openings. We're projecting 5. We got 4 in background.
4 in background. Yeah. Our last hiring wave or hiring event kind of all wrapped together. It was very successful. We ended up putting almost 11 people through into the background phase for all divisions. And actually, I think we've even hired a couple of so we've done pretty good. Now we're just working through the background process, background, psych, and etc.
Why did that change? Last time you came before this group, it was, I think you had like 14, 15 openings, and it was pretty tough. Is that?
If you figure out the answer to that, please let me know, because I want to duplicate it. I don't know. I don't have an answer. We just, in addition to applicants that were already in the queue, that were just waiting on a couple of things, and then we did the hiring event, and we had a much better turnout than we had the year before. It just gave us an opportunity to do two pretty heavily filled or scheduled interview panels. I don't know that I can explain why. I don't know what happened. I don't know what changed. I don't know what turned. But I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth.
So Sheriff,
We have 6 openings total or 6 openings in criminal?
6 in criminal.
Okay.
Yeah.
And 4 of those are in background checks?
Yes.
and can you tell what positions, are those all deputies?
Yes, they're all deputies. They're all criminal deputy positions. Most of them are the contract positions.
Okay.
So we're short 1 forest patrol deputy, which is a contract position. We're short 2 Rockaway positions. We're short a Marine position. So the majority of those are those contract positions. So
And during the pandemic, we were getting very creative in figuring out how do we bring on positions other than deputies to get the work done. Can you remind me, in this division, did we bring on other, I know we brought on records clerks, but I don't
the
know
only
if they
thing
were
in
here or there.
the only thing in the criminal division was that we traded 1 deputy position for a records clerk.
Okay, and so that records clerk is there, and these 6 openings for deputies would not include the traded position?
Correct.
So, because you were at 22.75 staff in 2021, and then that was your actual, and then you were budgeted at 28.75 in 22-23, and still budgeted at 28.75 this year, and that is because within that 28.75 is that 1 swap trade.
Yeah, I think the number of staff would stay the same. It was just the designation. 1 was a records clerk, 1 was a deputy, which of course is a significant savings.
And are you using any rehires in criminal? I know we've been using, again, creativity, thank you, during the pandemic. Are we using any here? And as you fill vacant positions, will those positions roll off?
What do you mean?
So if you-
So number 1, yes, we are using retire rehire.
So how
More
many
for
are
the
in
jail
here?
side than on the criminal side.
Okay.
But repeat that, the
So
second
the other
part.
question was, if you're using any rehires in the criminal side, as you fill the deputy openings, will those positions, the rehires, no longer be part of your department?
I sure would hope not. One of our retire rehires is fulfilling the halftime contract with BLM and the other halftime, or like splitting between a BLM contract and community development. And you can't take a full-time person to try to cover a halftime position. So utilizing the retire rehire position to cover things like that is critical. And the parks, for example. I know Joanne would love to have somebody up there, and we're working on trying to get somebody up there, but we can't utilize a full-time position because it's only a part-time or seasonal position. So yeah, there's always going to be a need for retire rehires. Yeah.
And
Does that answer your question?
It does, because I'm trying to figure out, we don't have enough money to do everything we want to do. So trying to figure out how we can make this work. And so looking at, are there retire rehires that we have brought on in that gap period that we're doing the work of full-time deputies? But what I'm hearing you say is that is not what you have currently. You do not have retire rehires doing the work that would be done by the wonderful recruitment we've had.
So the full-time positions that are open and not covered right now are not being done by part-time rehire
They're
or
just
the
not being done
retired.
right now.
Yeah,
Maybe that's
like-
clear way to ask the
Yeah,
question.
that is correct.
Okay, it's work that's just not being done. Okay.
I can also tell you that from July 1 of last year, so the beginning of this fiscal year, to the end of February, we had over 6,000 hours of overtime in the sheriff's office generally. So corrections and patrol.
Right, and most of that
Which
was
is on
corrections,
with
right?
what's that?
The majority of that fell in corrections.
I don't know how it
correct?
broke. I don't know
I
how
think
it broke
Sean
down.
and I looked at it, and
It
the
probably
majority-
was, but that's as we start to fill more positions. 6,000 end of February, 8 months into fiscal year. It's on track to be 9,000 by the end of the fiscal year. And as you start filling positions, the overtime starts going down. So there should be a significant savings on overtime as those positions start getting filled. So that's a significant number when you consider a 40-hour employee works 2,080 hours a year, and we're covering almost 9,000, we're projected to cover 9,000 overtime hours in 1 year
Right.
out of necessity, so.
And the 6 openings in criminal, going back to that for a second, are they all contract positions, so they all come with their own revenue source?
No.
Okay. How
No.
many of them are?
Matt, correct me if I'm wrong here, but like I said, 2 in Rockaway, 1 forest, and 1 marine, so that's 4. I believe 1 is another open sergeant position. And then I think, is there
Detective.
a detective, so that would be a not a contracted position per se.
4. Thank you.
4 of the 6, yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Sure.
So Josh, just a couple, small items. Your line 7101, professional services, goes from 2,000 to 7,000. Kind of just ask what that bump is.
Yeah, that's the majority of that, if not all of it, is the background investigator that we've had to hire.
And one other, your line item 7899, miscellaneous materials and services, jumps from 2,000 to 8,000.
Okay, Matt?
I'd have to check with that one.
And I know our accounting technician, Karen, is online. She may actually know off the top of her head why we bumped that.
Because that's in line with what you've spent so far this year.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Your Actual.
That's in line with actual spending. Thank you, Sean.
Mhm.
But we still don't know what exactly that is.
No, I'd have to,
And
Somebody knows.
Somebody knows, but we've actually spent that much this year.
yes.
And theoretically think we will do so again.
Josh, another question. When you do code enforcement, does that get billed out to the other departments then, like community development, if you've got a halftime code enforcement person for them?
Yeah, and Sean may be able to help me out on this, but it's an intergovernmental
Intercounty transfer.
intercounty transfer from community development, and then we have a contract with BLM, so if they're doing BLM coverage, that's part of the contract, we get paid for that.
Okay,
If they find somebody for Parks, Parks will pay for it.
Correct,
Mhm.
okay.
correct.
I probably knew that at one time.
Do you have any idea, or maybe Sean does, what 9,000 hours of overtime represents? What is that number?
Not off the top.
It's a variety.
I meant the total, how much is it? That's what I meant.
Oh, dollar wise?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. She would probably give that.
9,000 or 6,000 was.
Well, it's 6,000 now, projected to be 9.
9, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the snapshot that we looked at was July 1 to February 28, so 8 months. And the 9,000 is the presumable, that's what we're on track to do. It may be a little less because we pulled a few people. Huh?
Miscellaneous was toes.
Oh, okay, the miscellaneous was the tows associated with homeless encampments.
Oh, okay,
That's
okay.
where that came from. And it's not just the tows that go, it's the removal of the vehicles and everything that goes with it.
That makes sense.
So 9,000 is about 241,000.
Thank you.
And Sean, did you have the breakdown of what was in criminal and what was in jail? Just, we may need that further in our discussion when we're trying to figure out exactly what the shakedown's gonna be, because, well, the other question, we'll get to jail and how you all had to retool, and if that looks like it's long-term or going back to regular shifts, but that's the next conversation.
Do I have what was it?
What was the overtime in criminal
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
the overtime in jail, when we talk about the 6,000 hours and the $240,000 and.
Yeah, it was 104 so through March in criminal and 120, 130 in jail.
So I'm sorry, in criminal was how much overtime?
104, 104,000
hours or $1,000?
I don't have the hours in front
Oh,
of me.
okay.
We had to extrapolate because in
Yeah.
the system, we've added on-call hours.
Uh-huh.
And on-call is actually paid at a lower rate for the contract, whereas overtime hours is the full, so we actually had to extrapolate those. They're
Sure.
in the system as overtime hours, but we had to pull the on-call, because that's not a fair number, because that's paid at, a couple bucks an hour.
We're working on it.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
As we're digging through to figure out, where's the balance?
Okay, well, you want to go on to the next one then from criminal, or do we have any more questions on that part?
ready for jail, right?
Now, let's
Okay.
go into the jail and then we'll talk about marine or whatever else you have left.
Okay, so criminal, the jail, again, personnel services, we're not asking for anything. The increase is only as pertains to negotiated raises, things of that nature. As you get down in there, the adjustments have been, again, we tried to be very conservative, based a lot of it on the reality of things, and made adjustments from there, and we tried to be, again, conservative on it. I don't know that there's anything major to point out here. Medical services is still one of our biggest ones, because that's an extremely important contract that we have to maintain, and if we're not doing it through that contract, we're having to hire our own nurses, which is just not something we want to do.
That's all done through Adventist Health.
Correct. Correct. And they are phenomenal partners. They do an amazing job. So, but yeah, that number just maintains. That's, again, part of the contract. Buildings and grounds did bump up a little bit. We are seeing a lot of our windows from the buildings starting to crack, and damages to those. So we have some serious issues. Sean actually was able to walk through there, and I think I've had you guys through there to see those as well. So we're trying to address those type of issues. Of course, we're still having problems with the roof, and we have people out working on that. We have plumbing issues, etc. So building was neglected for a lot of years, and we're paying the price now. So slightly increased on that one.
How old is the building? If I were gonna pick a number, I'd say 24 years, 25.
I think it was in the mid-90s,
Yeah, that's what I
mid to
remember.
late 90s. I don't know directly off the top of my
So that
head,
would
but
make it around 25 or 26,
Yeah.
somewhere in there.
yeah,
That's for a public building, that's not very long.
yeah.
Well, the problem was they put a flat roof on it.
I know.
They put a flat roof on it, and this new roof is doesn't have enough of a pitch, and it's leaking. I mean, we've had a lot of ceiling tiles that have been damaged, and a lot of other damage, mold, mildew, causing people, health issues, things of that nature. So we're trying to get all that addressed as much as we can. There's been a lot of other, our kitchen stoves after 25 years are out, and a commercial grade oven is not cheap.
Are
So-
those all electric or propane?
I think we switched to propane, didn't we?
They're electric.
They are electric.
The water heater.
The water heaters are propane, that got switched, but the ovens are electric. So that's what that is, and I think given the work that Lieutenant Silvera has done on the facilities, he acts as the facilities manager as well. Over the last couple of years, a $7,000 increase is really not all that bad, because it's just been one battle after another. So I think today he actually had plumbers, roofers, and somebody else out there too, wasn't it? Working the HVAC system. So we had three contractors out there working on different things today. They actually had one of those camping canopies to block the rain. They had that up there yesterday to stay, because it was raining while they were actually trying to work. So, yeah, that's.
I just wanted to say we are still paying on that jail roof when it was repaired. I think it's 28 or 29 before it's paid off.
Wow.
That's
Hence the reason that there's been some, Joel's been involved, Kevin Jolly's been involved, Lieutenant's been involved, and there's, yeah, so,
Feels like it should be warranty, but it doesn't work that way.
yeah.
So I don't see any other major building improvements for this year. Are there other things? I know we're gonna do a full facilities assessment with our ARPA money of all the buildings of the county, and I'm sure we'll learn more when we do that. But you guys haven't identified any particular projects for this year?
Well, the windows are high up on the list.
They're above capital outlay.
Yeah, there's nothing in capital outlay that we're gonna be targeting this year.
Okay.
So
I imagine we do facilities assessment, we'll find some things. but
I'm certain that we will. Yes.
That'll be on the fly.
So Sheriff, the prisoner's board from 2020 up to your requested 23-24 budget, I mean, it starts like 92,000, 108,000, then jumps to 190,000 last year and $180,000 this year.
Mhm.
Your jail capacity versus occupancy, has your jail occupancy gone up at all? You still keeping it at really low levels?
It's not, it's more average now. Senate Bill 48 made a difference. But we're fully open, and any decreases that we're seeing at this point really is more of a result of Senate Bill 48 and the court hiring the release officer. But that's one reason, you know, it's one of those deals because this is where we pay for food to feed AIC. So we have to be really careful about that number. You know, we feel comfortable that, yeah, our population is mellowing just a little bit from what it has been in the past, and so we can come down a little bit, but we don't want to short ourselves on the ability to feed the AICs that are in our custody. So that's why we're careful on that.
So when we're talking numbers, I mean, at one time, we were taking in prisoners from Clatsop County, and we had 110 people in the jail at one point.
I worked in there when there was 128 housed before, so.
DOJ came in and said, we can't do that. So I think our maximum occupancy went somewhere to about 90 or something like that.
96. Correct,
So-
96.
How many people do we have in the jail today?
What's our?
45.
45.
So
Just asking this question, is it can we bring people from outside Tillamook County in to help pay the expenses on the jail?
Could we start renting rooms?
Yeah, exactly.
charge TLT.
Right, you know, one of our biggest customers was Clatsop, and they have a brand new facility, you know, and I don't think that there's really been much call for that lately. Am I misspeaking, Lieutenant?
No, sir.
Yeah, there hasn't been much call. We still do trades with facilities on an as-needed basis, but it's a trade, you know. But to my knowledge and clearly to his, bed rentals are not much of a thing anymore. Because I mean, there was a time like when I actually worked in the jail where we had, I think it was 20 beds rented for Clatsop. We had ICE was renting beds from us, you know, and I even want to say that DOC was actually renting beds from us as well. The sheriff that we were hired under, Todd, he liked to have his jail at full capacity. So times are a little bit different, but yeah, rental beds are not really. There's not much call for it now. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, and remembering back, you don't get the cream of the crop when they send it
No.
up.
Yeah.
They always send, yeah. And whatever the negotiated price was for that, it was lower than what it was actually costing us to do it. So I really don't think there was much, you know, there's a cost per day and all this kind of stuff. And the reality is that it was ultimately probably costing us more than what we were getting in the rental bed fees. So
Do you have any juveniles at all? They're all elsewhere under
yeah,
18.
we do not house juveniles in our facility. In fact, there's a lot of rules. If we have to bring one in for, you know, like a juvenile DUI or something like that, you know, we have to tape up windows and nobody can see them. There's a lot of rules that govern that. So we have no juveniles.
The jump that we're looking at in prisoners board from 2021 and 21-22, is that because there were so many fewer people in jail during COVID? Fewer people to feed?
Hang on.
It's 6260.
So the 21-22 budget, that would have been my first year doing it, from 108 to 190. I don't have an answer for that. I'm sorry. I don't know why there was that significant jump.
Okay, is that food during COVID?
And there may be, I think there's more things that come out of it, but generally speaking, it is the fund that we use to buy food.
I would just say, having been running assisted livings in that same window and feeding people, everything just went through the roof.
Yeah.
And you had to bought, yeah, it was crazy. And I'm
It
sure
would
jail was the same.
be an educated guess that would be the main reason. I don't want to say 100% that's why, because I just don't know the answer. But yes, that would be a logical explanation with the price of things going up.
So you're a little under now, you've got 44% left at the end of March, so you've still got $84,000 in that fund right now. So it may be a little bit over, you know, what's needed today.
That's one of those line items that it's very scary to run out of money when you're talking about having. It's just like the Adventist Health contract. You know, that's one of those things that you don't want to underspend on, because the liability associated with not caring for, or feeding, or providing adequate, care, or for people in our custody. That's very dangerous, and so staying with a slightly higher number to protect us in case, things are changing they're changing often, especially at the state level, which is where the Senate Bill 48 came from, and that made a big impact on how many AICs are just getting booted without even having to post bail.
So this is where I jump in, where I have with every other director as well. So one of the things that we've realized in the structure of our budget is that every department is budgeting for contingency, and Sean, through the general fund, is also budgeting for contingency. So what we're discovering in our budget is that at some level, we have over budgeted for contingency. So don't be surprised if between now and when we all come back together in May, that Sean will be having some conversations with you about the spaces where you appear underspent, where you've probably put it there for exactly the good reasons that you're talking about, which is still a good reason. It's just that we've also put it in a general fund contingency bucket for a good reason, and so it's impacting our ability to do the things we want to do, like make raises for our staff and have the personnel that we want to have. All of those things are being cut short because the contingency in our budget in many cases is being double called for. Does that make sense? So what we're looking at is how do we get a more accurate picture of contingency so that we are not over budgeting by a significant amount of money, because what we're finding is at the end of a budget year, there's unspent funds, and it's kind of in all departments. And so we appreciate and understand that everybody wants to make sure they don't run out, and Sean's also protecting against that. So we're double protecting, so there'll probably be some tweaking that you'll be asked to do just for us to get a real contingency, which gives us real money back to spend in the budget for the things that we really need.
So hypothetically, we lower the prisoner board numbers.
Hypothetically, you would lower that, and in the event that you need it, Sean's got it sitting in the spending authority in the treasurer's office.
And if that's what's needed to be on paper, and that's what you guys say happens, then that's what happens. But that's not one of those line items that we can argue back and forth about.
Nope.
That's one of those line items where we have to feed them.
Absolutely, 100%. And I told the DA the same thing. She has prosecutor expenses and things that are just this very large estimate, because you just don't know. And for us to try to hone in, because what we are finding is that in any given year, departments are turning back between $1 and $2 million in unspent funds to the treasurer essentially at the end of the year. And that's $1 or $2 million that was not able to be used for the things that you are asking us for sitting in front of us today. And we don't want to be in that position. We want to have really tight budgets where we know, and then where there is a contingency for it, but we're not spending contingency at the level we are saving it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And we do want to hear you out and be able to give you what you need and meet Sean's mandate for a balanced budget. So one of the things we're working on in this.
Yeah.
And again, Josh, the reason that's important is because we're required by law to have a balanced budget. So when every department has all these contingencies in it, and then Sean has a contingency budget, that means we have to cut in certain places.
And that's fine. I completely understand that. I'm not saying that I don't understand that. That's a logical. It's the law. It's what has to happen. What I'm saying is, if we cut the prisoners board and we have to come back and ask for more money because something happens, we don't have. There's no choice. We have to feed them.
Yeah. We totally agree. And
Yeah.
Sean, like I said, Sean has had contingency sitting in the general fund department that I don't think we've used since 2015, 16 or something.
Yeah.
And just so you know, Aubrey said the exact same thing. If I have a murder trial, this is money that I absolutely need, and they said, yep, we understand that.
100%.
Yeah.
But if you
For
don't
some
think-
reason, there seems to be a trend in our county of homicides
Yeah.
in the last couple of years. We used to see on average one a year, and we've had, I think, 3 plus an officer-involved shooting plus a murder-suicide. So, for some reason, that's increasing, and those investigations cost money.
They're costly.
And what she's saying is true.
Yeah,
So.
Yeah.
absolutely.
So can you address the vacant positions in the jail? In 2021, 22, you had 15 folks on staff. Currently, we're asking for 23.5 folks on staff. So, talk about the vacancies you have currently, please.
23.5 includes the management position.
What's
Is that
that?
correct, the 23.5?
I
That's
see
everybody.
Because I believe
23.5,
we're-
I don't know what that is.
We're
Sean.
21 deputies and corrections technicians, a
I-
cook, and lieutenant, and then halftime in the thing. So yeah, I think it's, so we have, obviously, we have a lieutenant, we have a cook, and we have our halftime in the medical department. So that leaves 21 positions that operate the jail on a daily basis. I believe we're at 15, maybe 16? 16 on the 16th. So on the 16th, we have a new corrections tech starting, so that'll be 16, leaving 5 openings, and I believe we have 5 in background still for the jail.
And I know that in order to help with the overtime, you guys went to 12-hour shifts so that you could run on 2 shifts instead of 3 shifts.
Mhm.
Can you talk about, is that intended to be temporary or permanent? or do
That's
we know?
intended to be permanent, and at this point, the staff love it so much that even though they had reluctance when we talked about it and voted for it, they are now at a point where some of them even said that if we went back to 8s, they may not want to work here.
Really?
They really, like, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to get away from that place for more than 2 days.
Oh, you bet.
And now they are getting that. And the problem is we started that with the minimum number of staff to make it work. We lost 1. So I went back to them, back to the union, because it was a negotiated thing, and said, what do you guys want to do? I don't want to take 12s away, but if you want to keep 12s, you guys are going to have to cover some overtime until we get things filled.
Right.
And almost every one of them said, I'm not going back to 8s. They are going to have a meeting per the contract here coming up real soon, just to take a vote to make sure they want to continue, because that was part of the MOU with them, is that they, at the 3-month mark, get to do a reassessment. Most likely it will continue. The trial period is 6 months. We'll take everything we've learned from the trial period, implement it permanently, and it should end up being a permanent schedule. The problem is when you have minimum staff and you have 3 people on, that is the minimum staff that we absolutely must have. 1 person takes the day off, you have a 12-hour shift that needs covered, and it's all overtime.
Right.
So can you address your officer safety in jail, 2 12-hour shifts? You still feel that's
Yeah,
a good situation?
yep,
Thank you.
without a doubt. They prior to that, they were working 12 and 16-hour shifts on almost a regular basis with 2 days off.
What if you went to right now at 50% occupancy? What if that crept up, let's say, to 75 or 80%?
The occupancy really does not change the staffing level or needs. All it does is increase the workload slightly. So, and what I mean by that is that if there's 1 inmate in there or there's 100 inmates in there, you still have to have a certain number of staff. You still have med pass, you still have tray pass, you still have transports, you still have court hearings, you still have commissary orders, and everything that goes along with that, court paperwork, all that stuff. So you're either doing paperwork and med pass and stuff for 1 inmate or 5 inmates, or you're doing it for 75 inmates. So it's like, it takes a little longer doing the med pass, takes a little longer doing meal pass, a little bit more labor involved, but the number of staff does not change. So if you have the more staff you have, the more that workload is spread out, if that makes sense.
I think so. So it's like a bus driver goes the same speed whether he's got 20 people on the bus or 40.
Essentially,
Something
yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like I back when I worked in the jail and we were at numbers like 125, 130, which by the way is miserable. Lieutenant Soler and I worked together side by side, and you're just running from start to finish. And there was times where there was 3 people on, and one of those are stuck in the control room. So you have 2 people working the entirety of the jail. That's just the way it is. But if that number got down to 70, then your workload decreased a little bit, but you still have to have the same number of people. So the problem, and again, the problem is because that 3 is required, 1 person takes the day off. You have overtime. So you need to get to a point, or if you have 1 person on FMLA and then somebody wants to take a day off. Now you have 2 people off that shift. You have 2 shifts to cover. So that's where you get into the 4 to 5 people per shift, so that you can cover that stuff. So that when you do have a transport day, deputies can actually go do transports or come and do court security, or help with booking releases at court security on Mondays, things of that nature. And in follow-up to what your question was on the criminal side, if we get full staff, our part-time, the rehires in the jail have been absolutely critical
Yeah.
to our jail operations running. So if we get to full staffing there, those deputies are doing duties that our normal positions that are open would be doing. So that would decrease slightly with our part-time our retire rehires in the jail.
Okay, thank you.
In that division, it would make an impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, for once, we actually have more people in background or more applicants for the jail than patrol, which is unheard of. So again, I don't know the explanation to that, and if somebody has it, I'd love to hear it.
So the correction officer is getting regular 3-day breaks now?
So with the way our schedule is now is it's in groups of, it's in teams. We have 4 teams is the best way to describe it. 2 teams for day shift, 2 teams for night shift. They work a 4 on, 3 off, 3 on, 4 off. So every other week they're actually getting 4 days off.
I wouldn't go back to 8s either.
No, I kind of want to go to that, but and what's nice about that is that there's a lot of them that are on their 4 days off or even their 3 days off will come in and cover overtime, and they still get a long weekend. The 5/8 is in a situation like that. By the time you get home and you start your first day, especially if you're a graveyarder, you really don't get a full day off.
Mm-hmm.
So this has been huge to the overall health, which the health and wellness of staff, which is again critical to retaining the employees that we do have. So
That's great.
So just to confirm, you have 5 openings and 5 in background checks right now.
yeah, because I believe we're 21. Yes,
Okay, great.
yeah, and one of those is another corrections tech, and 4 of them are deputies. The hiccup, we have so many in background or so many to do that we actually have 2 that are waiting for backgrounds, but we have nobody to do it, including our background investigator. So, they've got a couple under Sheriff Kelly and one of the sergeants is actually doing background. So in and amongst their normal duties, they're doing that just to be able to help pick up the slack and try to get the process going a little bit faster. So.
Okay.
All right, any more on the jail? So then we have Marine, that's the next one, I think, right?
So for some reason, I don't know why I can't find a copy of Marine, but Marine is pretty simple. It's actually part of the criminal division. I'm not sure why it's a separate budget in and of itself with all the other contracts are part of this, so I don't know why it's a separate one. There is some overage from the grant that we get for Marine, but that actually helps fulfill a portion of we were required to match some of those grant dollars from the Marine Board. Marine Board is very supportive of our office because of the amount of waterways. So, but yeah, we've got our 2 deputies on there, and I think there's even a part-time, which is our cadet position. One of those positions is not filled right now just because of our staffing levels. Any other increase in the personnel is again going to be because of negotiated COLA raises. Materials and services, it looks to me like we're pretty even across the board. Fuel and lubricants, we're comfortable leaving it the same. Pretty much everything else is the same as the prior year. Pretty easy one, pretty self-explanatory on the Marine one. It'd be great if we actually were able to lump that in someday and not have it be a separate one, but I don't know if that's possible.
I don't know if there's a reason.
I don't know if there is either. Matt, you know?
Waiting for my.
Right, so before all of our times, they had Marine
We'll
separate.
look at it, John, see if we can find some reason why. I mean,
Yeah.
There's really no reason why it can't just be put right into the criminal thing and add the Marine money as an income.
There may be something in the grant. That's why it's separated out.
Okay.
And it may be easier just for grant reporting.
So something we can look at it, I'm sure.
We're looking, I mean, we're ready to address because we always did it that way, is not necessarily the right way, so.
Agreed.
Good questions to dig into.
All right, what's next after Marine then?
Community corrections. I'm going to try not to butcher this in front of Lonnie. Hers is one of the most complicated that I've ever seen. It is all special revenue. She's, grant and aid, JRI, specialty court. There used to be some fees and stuff, but I'll just do a quick overview. Personnel services, again, same as always, we haven't added or any additional positions. We did last year add the OS2 after converting our previous OS2 to a role probation technician. And again, that all worked out in the budget. So I think that happened last year, so that already exists. We do have one open position in there right now, and we have one in background for it. So that's she may be the first division in our office in I don't know how many years to be full. So we're not gonna push our luck until it actually happens. So as you go through here, most everything, and I think generally speaking, she's in the process of, I say she because she does all the work. She does come to me and everything, and I try to help, but usually I just make matters worse. But she's in the process of going through her grant cycles. So she's the biennial process for her grants is coming up soon. This is a generalized map and will most likely be changed once she actually knows the numbers that she's going to get. And I think that is pretty common practice over the years. So this is just a general idea. There is one thing I do want to note. If you look on the expenses down towards the bottom, inter-county work crew, inter-county sanction beds, and inter-county DOC 1145 beds, you'll see differences in the bottom two numbers. The total is the same. The 1145 services used to be 200,000 and it got reduced to 115.5. The sanctioned beds used to be 31 and it got bumped up to 115.5.
Okay.
So the numbers are the same,
Yeah.
but that has to do with reporting and accountability on her grant process. So nothing too major there.
So are you reinitiating the work crew program?
So yes. So as soon as we have the staffing, which fingers crossed we'll have that pretty soon, and once everybody gets through training, we will be able to implement that back in. I'm actually looking forward to it because there's a lot of services that the work group provides, and it's my understanding that Public Works and Parks would actually give some money to help account for that program. So right now it's just staffing. We're concentrating so much on just running the jail that we just don't have the extra staff to be able to do the work crew. But that we've gotten rid of none of our work crew stuff. We're actually targeting and looking at and working towards trying to be able to do that. We're rebranding the JRI program, so the programs associated with the JRI grant. And instead of focusing it all on just work crew, we're putting it under a new program. We're calling it Brighter Futures, and it has to do with getting your food handler's card, GED classes, inmate worker status instead of just work crew, because work crew is in fact an inmate worker. They're getting time off their sentence for performing work. So instead of being assigned to, say, the kitchen or the laundry room, they're just being assigned to outside work crew. It's all the same. We already track how many hours are worked, how many inmate workers and stuff, so we've lumped it all together. And so it won't necessarily be a work crew line item that the money's going to go towards with the JRI program, but it's more of a bigger picture rebranding. We're just trying to make sure that we're trying to make it look different and show them that we're a little more serious. Not serious. We're just cleaning it up for the new JRI process is what it amounts to. So yes, we do want to bring it back. I've wanted to bring it back for quite some time. Right now we're paying a lawn company to mow our field, $800 a month. We have 2 retiree hires that have actually come back 2 days a week to do maintenance. So we're actually getting caught up on a lot of stuff that we don't want to have to pay a contractor to come in and do. This last spring or this last cycle, we didn't have gnats in our office, which last year we did, because every year they would actually spray bug spray, but all of the front offices just had gnats everywhere flying in through the vents. We don't have that, so years of not having those people there to do the maintenance, which it used to be the work crew that would get up there and do it, but bringing these guys back was able to take care of that. So we're looking at trying to get them to where they're able to take care of the mowing once a week, which in turn would save us $800 a month. But we're down to one mower, and it's one of the small mowers, so it would actually take an investment of a new mower to be able to do that. So a new mower would pay for itself in X number of months, because we're already paying $800 to this lawn company to take care of our yard for us. So yes, bringing a work crew back as soon as we're able, that is a big one. It's also worth noting that Ani has been bringing this to my attention. She's been following this, and she may be able to talk a little bit more about it. But going back last year, if you remember, I did talk about the law that Oregon legislation passed prohibiting the collection of supervision fees from those on supervision. That was a huge hit to her budget because those fees were a significant sum, and they help offset a tremendous, quite a few things that were costs. And so I brought that up last year, mentioned it to you guys that, and I think I even had a line item where I was trying to get general fund to put, just a chunk of money in there to start thinking about needing to help cover those. We got more great news, and at the state level, they're talking about reducing the money that's going to be distributed through the grant and aid by, I think it was 40 million.
Well, they haven't.
They haven't said. It's just there's some preliminary estimates. So we're not getting ourselves too worked up. We know the number's going to be less. So what happens is that pot becomes smaller at the state level. Then they went through and they made adjustments to the allocation percentages, which naturally Tillamook dropped. So our allocation is going to be smaller, and it's going to be from a smaller pool. We don't know exactly what kind of an impact that's going to be, but most likely it's going to be in the hundreds of thousands for a biennium. So we kind of have had some preliminary discussions about things that we may be able to cut, things we may be able to adjust. She's been pretty gracious with the 1145 beds and the work crew and things of that nature. Those may end up getting reduced, which means that the corrections budget ends up having less revenue. But this is if the state is cutting that funding and then changing the allocation rates, it does nothing but hurt us.
So is that the Department of Corrections 4225 line item?
For
4250.
Ani?
It's gonna be the biggest,
Yeah, you get what, you're budgeted for 1,026,870, that's the amount for
grant
that.
aid, yeah.
And tell me about the beginning balance, because you all have a huge beginning balance that's come from years of being unable to be fully staffed and, things beyond your control, but is that the same kind of money? Will we be able to carry ourselves for some time as we use up that beginning fund balance of 1.547 million?
The short answer is yes.
Okay, so it's bad news that they're doing it, and ultimately it's gonna bite us. The good news is we have a little bit of time before that happens, because we have 1.5 million to use.
The short answer is yes.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot more complicated than that, because there is still, that's not just free money. There are parameters that she can use it for or can't use it for. So she has to stay within those. And I know it was weeks and hours worth of work that her and Karen went back, 10, 12 years to figure out where the leftover money came from, so that we didn't violate the rules of where the money came from and what it can be used for. So they got that all figured out. So that there are parameters around what that money can be used for. It's not a blank check.
it's not all the Department of Corrections money that's being cut, some of it's other pools of money.
So, what?
So it's not all the same kind of money that you were talking about that was gonna be reduced, it's some different colors.
The beginning balance?
Yeah,
The beginning balance is a mix of all of that, including supervision fees.
okay.
Reimbursement for UAs, things, it's, I don't know how many different funds that it actually came from, 610?
so you'd have your grant and aid, Measure 57, anything that's left over from JRI or behavioral health support that we haven't used, and then supervision fees. A lot of that can only be used on funded cases, though. The supervision fees would be the exception to that, so.
Right. Okay.
And then, yes, the allocation percentage, what we get from the state, gets applied to the different fund, like grant and aid, Measure 57, JRI, so they use the same sort of allocation percentage.
Okay.
So yeah, the allocation percentage that they use for grant and aid carries over to the same allocation for JRI, for all of those.
Why are so many coded 4225, the different?
Because I hit a copy paste and I need to update it.
Oops.
Thanks for the help, Sean.
That was me. If you notice, the budget spreadsheets are a little different. It's easier to read them going across. But Deb told me if I wanted to do it, I could do it after she left.
Okay.
I have my sticky note to update it.
So Sean, I've got a question on the budget.
Mhm.
Telephone, $8,000 still there.
They're not general fund. Oh wait, in criminal?
No, in community corrections.
They're not general fund.
Yeah.
They're special revenue funds, so they pay for theirs.
Okay.
So the staffing is 7 to 7 1/4. You picked up 1/4 FTE on this one, right, in the request?
I don't know where the quarter,
That's-
okay, yep, that was not talked about. The quarter, PNP or Community Corrections is picking up a quarter of the salary or the wage of our accounting technician, because our accounting technician does accounting for community corrections,
So
so
it's not a net gain to the department, it's a reallocation.
it's a reallocation. Correct.
What else have we got under corrections?
I think that's about it. Again, it's just, we're gonna be, well, Ani's gonna be paying close attention and hopefully not stressing or losing too much sleep over it, but, you know, there could be some major changes coming. So, you know, she still carries a large unfunded caseload. We've been trying to work with the DA's office and the court to lessen that, and it may get to a point where we just simply have to refuse. And then there's a question of legality and how the court will interpret that and what the court will do if anyways, so that option is being explored as well, which would help, but the unfunded cases hurt, especially without supervision fees.
And we can't be alone in that. That must be happening across the state to departments everywhere because
It does, and those departments refuse, and their court just kind of accepts it from what I understand, just generally speaking. I mean, that's probably not every single jurisdiction, but a lot of unfunded cases, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Ani, if I'm speaking way out of line, but there is a public interest in some unfunded cases. You know, like a perfect example of an unfunded case would be something like a DUI. But you know, there absolutely can be a public interest, and those that have that public interest, it falls within our requirement of things we should be doing. But there are some that just don't have that public interest, and you know, we really just shouldn't be doing. So, you know, it's a balance between that.
I think so, and I think that's unfortunately the world that we're facing going forward for probably every single department that we have is what are our mandates? What are the things we do because they're the right thing to do for our communities? And unless and until the state gives us some way to change the tax structure, we're gonna find ourselves in positions where we are either going out and asking our citizens for more money, or we're going to be not doing things that are really great for the community but unmandated. And that's just a horrible position to think of ourselves being in. But unfortunately, as we look at some of our revenue projections, it feels like we're getting closer and closer to that space where we're going to have to make those untenable decisions. So I don't look forward to it, and you know, you all are already there.
So with the forecasted shortfalls on revenues, is there any other plans other than cuts?
So we're trying right now, as we talked about, to get really clear about our budget so that we are not holding back money that we don't have to. So that's the first thing we have to do, because we have to be able to stand in front of the public with a straight face and be able to say we really have gone as deep as we can go into our budget to find the efficiencies that could be there. So that's round one, and that's where we are today. There is some revenue forecasting and planning. We'll be working with a consultant to try to really get our heads around exactly where we are now, where we will be in 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. We've started doing some internal projections. I think, Josh, you were able to see some of those. We'll be sharing those with the full committee this afternoon, which is what we are seeing. We'll be working again with a professional to help us take that a little further. And we will be taking that next step to look and say, are there things that we cannot do, and at what point do we need to go out and begin to ask our constituents, do you want to lose services or do you want to pay more? Because in order to go out and ask that question to our constituents, which is really what a levy is, we have to make sure we've done the work on our side and really understand that there is no other way. So from my perspective, that's kind of the course that we're on. And if we get to the end of it and there's no other way, then levies become a possibility. But that's going to take a lot of work of educating our county, our taxpayers, what they currently get and what they're going to lose, and in order to get them to really probably come to the table with some seriousness about potentially increasing a tax rate.
And actually, that at least the conversation about alternatives to cutting are being talked about, apparently.
Oh, yeah,
That's
definitely.
I don't think that we should be cutting service. I think that we should be looking at outside ways of bringing in more income and what that looks like. And does it mean
Absolutely.
taxing just our homeowners, or is there other ways that it can be looked at? So,
Trust me,
and I'm glad that at least is an option on the table, that it's being discussed.
Absolutely.
And I think sooner rather than later would be beneficial.
We have a grant writer that is in the commissioner's budget, if it makes it through the budget cycle, which is an attempt to try to bring in more money to do what we do without having to put it on the backs of our taxpayers. I think we've explored a lot of the things that are already paid for by our visitors, and it's challenging to figure out where else we can do that doesn't also strike our residents. And we've been watching, just as I know you have, you've brought some things to us. What about a tax on food? What about a tax on retail items? These have been tried in different areas of the state, and they've tried to focus it toward the visitor population, but it ultimately still also hits the resident population, and so it doesn't pass. So we're trying to look at all of the things and try to see what options may exist out there. But before we can do that with a straight face, we have to have looked hard and deep at ourselves on the inside to make sure that we can answer any questions that the public may have about our budget and how we do what we do.
Okay.
How about the TNT? Did you want to speak to that at all?
I tried to kind of cover that with the Sheriff's Trust and TNT and Technology Fund.
Okay.
Just basic, it only reflects the money that has come in through seizures or disposition through the court.
All right, well, I don't know that there's anything else under the sheriff's budget. Have we hit it all? I think we have. Okay, and if everybody is equally displeased, then we've done a good job. I guess you can say that you presented a good budget, and as usual, you have enlightened us and I think said that some of the things that absolutely need to be said. But from my perspective, just as being on this committee for quite some time, is I see a light at the end of the tunnel, particularly with restructuring the budget a little. And we've talked over the past years about some kind of a law enforcement levy or separate funding, not unlike the library or others. And maybe we're getting closer to that at some point. And
I've explored a lot of different options, everything from a levy to a special tax district to, as Commissioner Starr said, some of the additional taxes. I've seen the same thing she mentioned, that they have failed elsewhere. Citizens are not wanting to do that. I also see an increase of, or not an increase, but I see a couple million visitors to Tillamook County every year. And, I'm exploring every option we can possibly do, whether it's at the local level or the state level or both. The reality is that this county, and it's not just the sheriff's office, it's every department, but sheriff's office, well, the population of Tillamook County in the last 12 years has increased 10%. Our call volume of public generated calls has increased by 23%. Our caseload has increased by 14%. All while the self-initiated, proactive, preventative cop work has decreased almost 40%, you know. So these are huge decreases in preventative stuff and huge increase in the other stuff, all while we're working, 6,000 to 9,000 overtime hours a year. So it's something has to be done.
Well, we
And,
tried
I'm afraid
enhance
cutting
our-
is not going to be the answer, and I understand, and that's why I asked that question, and I'm glad that other things are being talked about. But yeah,
Well, you remember the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District, we've tried at least a couple
NPC,
times
yep.
in that. So that's an option too, but, these good folks they're not gonna forget it.
When Bill was in office, he wrote some legislation to change the TLT balance, the 70-30 balance, and I think it's well worth trying again, because I think more and more people understand that how visitors are negatively impacting public safety. And maybe that wasn't widely understood a couple of years ago, but I think it's more understood now, so I'm.
well, and luckily we have a senator and a representative that are very willing to, partner with us and go toe-to-toe or present legislation or fight on our behalf, so.
Absolutely, and I think the other one that I gave Suzanne some information, we'll follow up maybe for the next session, is a vacant house tax. We have a lot of people who are not using TLT, they're not our visitors here, but they have a second home, and they take money out of our coffers because they don't register their cars here, right? They don't come here and shop and stimulate our economy on a regular basis. They come 2 weeks out of the year and enjoy their home. We were talking about this earlier, folks on your street, right? And is that something we could get through maybe more easily than changing the TLT, which anybody thinks they can beat the lobby of Orla, good luck.
It was fun. I was known as that guy from Tillamook County.
Yeah, no, I know there was a bill specifically this year to try to add to the TLT specifically for law enforcement. I don't know if it made it past the first deadline or not.
I don't think it did either.
No, it didn't because of COVID. We had it up where public safety would be an allowable expense for TLT.
Well, there
Up
was
to
one this year.
30%, which would have been $2 million a year right now.
There was another one this year, Bill.
Was
that was
another
up
one?
as
I
well.
didn't-
But it also.
That was an additional 3%, but I don't think it made it past.
No, and I think that's part of the reason that TLT is so challenging. That lobby is going to stop you every time. So then it's what are the other ways that we look at, So there are a lot of things that we're looking at. But again, if it's going to be a voter thing, we have to be so clear with our voters and be able to explain.
Well, it has to be written right, and they have to trust it.
You got it. There's a lot of pieces to it.
But it also it needs to happen. There's got to get to a point where it goes from talking and planning to actual implementation. That otherwise we're just going to be spinning our wheels for the next 5, 6, 7 years. And I think I've made it clear that I'm willing to help and do whatever I can, and I've been doing a lot of it outside as well. So.
If I understand correctly, that county staff, it becomes a very complicated piece around county staff and has to be separate from the county staff running these kinds of things. So, well, we
Except
should
for
sit
us.
down as elected officials and
Yep,
talk
except-
about it.
except for
Because
us.
this is something that we have the capability to do, but we can't use the machinery of the county government to do it. So it becomes more complicated. We
Well,
would
the
like to think-
TLT has been tried to be modified ever since
Yes,
for
it
many
has.
years, and I was pretty much involved when I was in the business, and you get pulled from both sides, and she's right, the ORLA, which used to be the OLA, but now it's the ORLA, they added, 3,000 restaurants, and so they got money, they got staff, they've got a lot of influence, and they're a phone call away from another couple of $1 million anytime they need it.
Yep.
So it's a tough one, and I know when Wasco County, the Owls tried to change their TLT, within a matter of weeks, they had a summons and complaint in their hand
Mhm.
and found themselves in court, and it all went away.
Yep.
So it's a steep hill.
Yeah, we tried to get it just on the short-term rentals and not on the motels, because the short-term rentals are generally not members of Orla. But Orla still stepped in and just,
Yep.
it was brutal.
Yeah.
Senator Johnson came in and apologized to me for being there by myself. when I tried to testify.
If Senator Johnson couldn't do it, I don't know.
So if we need a distraction if we have to go after this again, can we just put you in front, and then we can just come out behind?
Oh, sure, why not? $10 bills willing to do anything.
That guy.
Anything.
Well, no, not anything.
All right, Sheriff, thank you very
All
much. I
right.
think we're good, and we'll probably make a few little changes, but you'll be invited to our next meeting. How's that?
Sounds good to me.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you all for being here.
Okay, we're pretty much on schedule, but let me ask a committee here, would you like to take 5 now, since we've been pretty intense here for an hour and a half, or push it off, or what's your pleasure? You want to take 5?
I can do either. Let's take 5 up from Thursday to class.
Take 5. The only thing, we've had poor Tassie waiting all day.
Right.
That's true.
I don't
Well,
think,
she's
I think we
exactly
should at
on
least have
schedule, though.
Tassie go.
Let's look at
We can do that. We can do that. I can wait.
Let's take about 5, try to make it about
Okay, take 5.
2:10.
Okay.
Don't say anything.